I'm going to explain why the strategies built into the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program are going to help you outsmart up to 10 pounds of body fat in just 3 weeks and help you have a high energy level with great quality of life. The program is highly advanced yet very simple to execute. I'm going to go through some questions that I've received one by one, and of course you can email me with your individual questions 7 days a week, scott@infinityfitness.com. What are all the benefits to the 21-day fat cell cleanse, and especially can you explain fat cell cleansing? Well, the program was devised by myself, Scott Mendelson, and Dr. Eric Serrano, MD, based on many years of experience helping clients all over the world. Personally, I have over 21 years of experience in that area, and Dr. Serrano about 35 years practicing as a physician with a specialization in nutrition to help people, again, earn low levels of body fat and also a very high quality of life. What we're trying to do with, let's call a base day during the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program, is to teach and also force the body to utilize more stored fat as fuel. So we'll concentrate on organically raised protein sources. We'll use a lot of vegetables, an unlimited amount of green vegetables, but we'll use a low carbohydrate intake, and we'll also focus on monounsaturated fats, guacamole being a good example. And doing things in that way forces the body to go after stored fat as a fuel source, because in the absence of carbohydrate, the body will seek out other fuel sources. Carbohydrate's an easily accessible, easily burned fuel source. No problem. But when you're trying to lose body fat and there's a lot of carbohydrate present, the body will just burn the carbs instead of the body fat. So if you can, again, eliminate carbohydrate for 3 weeks, you really transition the body in terms of its fuel usage for stored fat. Now, we will use targeted carbohydrate on the day 22 carb load, and that's where we'll take advantage of potatoes, fruits, and other things. And I will link to the day 22 carb load video series that I just completed. I'll link it in the YouTube. It'll probably go right about there. And I'll also link the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program to this video as well. But as far as the fat cells go, we have billions of fat cells. We cannot get rid of the ones that we have. We're, again, born with billions. We can gain more by eating the wrong things, such as foods fried in corn oil. But once you have these fat cells, you have a much larger fat storage warehouse if you've expanded the number, which a lot of people have done by accident at different points. A lot of people during the pandemic stay-at-home orders are eating very poorly. I hear it all the time. People are bored, they want comfort food, they're not exercising as much, so they're resorting to making a lot of bad food choices. So this is the perfect program for somebody that's been eating poorly and wants to lose body fat quickly, right? Things are getting better around the country. I think we can look forward to a really good summer, but you're not going to want to be one of those people that put on 10, 20, 30 pounds of body fat and then really regret it. So again, back to the fat cells, they can get toxic from a lot of things. You can get a lot of toxins in there, trans fats, preservatives, all these things screw up the fat cell function and make them larger. Well, when they become larger and they're dysfunctional, they're more sluggish, and it becomes very difficult to mobilize stored fat as fuel. So yes, if your billions of fat cells are really screwed up and you're in a caloric deficit, you're not going to lose body fat very efficiently. And I know that'll piss off a lot of nutritionists, but I really don't care, because from my perspective, I'm looking at not only the scientific range of things, but what actually works. So that's a brief overview on the fat cells. Now, one of the things that we do to make fat cells function better, we make organic food choices, and we use the alpha-mega M3, which has a scientifically engineered ratios of essential fats that Dr. Eric Serrano, MD, developed based on many years of successful patient research. Now, don't overlook this. This is not some generic fish oil. It has toxin-filtrated EPA and DHA. That's your fish oil. CLA, GLA, ALA, vitamin E, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and flaxseed oil, all in every dose. That's a lot of raw material. And again, the specific ratios that these essential fats are in are exclusive to the alpha-mega M3. So when the alpha-mega M3 is consumed with meals, most people, that's 3 capsules twice a day with food. The cells like all the good stuff in here, and then they want to purge larger bad stuff like preservatives and trans fats out of the cells. Then the cells can collectively shrink in size, and that's a very important way that we lower body fat. And on to the next question. Intermittent fasting is a key part of the program, and the simplest way to do it. don't eat after dinner, and your first meal the next day should be lunch. And for most people, that's going to be 16 to 18 hours. And the literature does tell us a lot of really good things happen at 12 hours, but a 16-hour fast is probably better in terms of improving insulin sensitivity, how the fat cells function, how the digestive system improves, because fasting is more than just lowering food intake. Yeah, some people may end up eating fewer calories, but in actuality, I think it makes the body a lot more efficient. And as a result, with men especially, they can eat a lot more in terms of quality food in comparison to prior times and lose more body fat. So there's something that happens with the body from multiple perspectives that improve in the factors that govern body fat loss as relates to fasting. So there is logic to it. There is, without a doubt in my mind, that it's very effective. And most people feel pretty good during a fasted process. Why? I think it has a lot to do with de-stressing the digestive system, also detoxifying the system, so to speak. The body adapts to having a longer fasted period. So don't assume necessarily that you're going to have low energy or hunger. And one of the things that we do first thing in the morning when using the 21-day fat cell cleanse is to replace breakfast with the 100% MR and the muscle synthesis powder. These are two amino acid based drinks that are scientifically engineered, again, by Dr. Eric Serrano, MD. Now, theoretically, they make the brain believe that a tremendous amount of food has come in, and as a result, metabolic rate increases through the roof, but there's nothing to burn except stored fat because the amino acids themselves have no caloric burden. The combination also does a great job of helping with exercise recovery, protecting hard-earned muscle, increasing the utilization of stored fat as fuel. So that's a very effective protocol to use during your fast. Also helps you a lot with hydration. It does not distract you from a fast at all. The 100% MR and the muscle synthesis powder have no stimulants. They have no caloric burden. They have no allergens. There's no dairy. I mean, there's no soy or anything. It's really well tolerated by a very large group of people. I can't think of anybody that's ever had a problem with that combination. It tastes great. Add cold water, you're good to go. Then the first meal of the day is lunch, and with lunch you're going to use 3 alpha omega M3 and 3 EZ14. Same thing with dinner. So if you're primarily relying on 2 meals, they should be pretty big. And on a base day during the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program, you want to have a lot of protein from organically raised sources, an unlimited amount of green vegetables, and you also rely on great fats such as extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter. And extra virgin olive oil should be from a dark bottle or can. Also, guacamole, avocados are good sources, right? There's some avocados here as well. The dairy, not everybody tolerates well, so I use that selectively. I tend to use that more on the high-calorie day that we'll talk about in a moment. But when people have a very high intake of green vegetables, and you can put grass-fed butter on them, and they eat, a good amount of protein, which can depend on your body weight. I would say for a 200-pound man, should be consuming somewhere probably 12 ounces. So like a whole steak. All right, man up, right? Cut it up, eat it. It takes some gradual time for some people to adjust to eating more meat. Some people, it comes very naturally to them, and it's good for you. And then the dietary fats, adding either avocado or extra virgin olive oil or grass-fed butter. And in the program file that I'll send you, it lists out everything what to do. It's pretty well refined based on the years that I'm doing this. And of course, you can email me, scott@infinityfitness.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So don't worry about the minutia at this point. It's really about getting the concepts down. I know what I'm doing. I'll help you. The next question. Mental clarity and energy, we talked about that. For the most part, people feel really good. But, here's something to understand. If you've been consuming a lot of refined carbohydrate for a long time and all of a sudden you cut it off, are you potentially going to have some withdrawal symptoms? Yeah, you could. And that's a really individual thing. But what's the other option? To continue eating that crap ongoing forever and blow up to 400 pounds? I mean, we know it's bad. So, you have to take some responsibility and ownership. and cut that stuff off, because maybe after a week or two, the people that do have withdrawal symptoms are feeling a lot better, their body composition is getting better. But for the most part, especially when using the 100% MR and the muscle synthesis powder, people have very high energy levels. You can also use the fat reduced FBO5 day and nighttime formulas. They help tremendously with optimizing the metabolic and hormonal environment in terms of fat burning. Dr. Serrano designed those to bust through many hormonal barriers. We'll talk about that in the future. Very effective as well. That helps a lot with daily energy, not having you bounce off the walls, but helping people to balance, mental energy is what they describe to me. They feel pretty good. Can you drink coffee or water? Yes, you can drink anything that does not have sugar or some other problems, like a stevia soda I've been drinking lately is really good. Green tea, coffee, all that's fine. You do not want to add cream. You do not want to add sugar. Question is, are carbs necessary? No, they're not. The body can survive very well and thrive, for that matter, off proteins and dietary fats. You do want some fiber from green vegetables. Again, green vegetables are unlimited, but no, your body does not necessarily need carbohydrate to perform any functions. Now, I do believe in targeted carbohydrate. In this case, you do the 21-day fat cell cleanse to transition the body to using more stored fat as fuel. Then you do the day 22 carb load, which is really potent for fat burning as a macronutrient cycling technique, because when we use carbohydrate at that time, as Dr. Serrano puts it, it's like putting a huge log on the fat burning fire. It makes it burn more intensely and for a longer period of time. And then you can repeat that cycle, 21-day fat cell cleanse, day 22 carb load, and repeat that cycle as many times as you want. A lot of my clients do it 4 times for a total of 88 days, and you're going to build metabolic and hormonal momentum. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that you don't start at 100 miles per hour the day one, right? It takes time to really build up many of these factors in terms of your metabolism, especially depending on what you've been doing. And again, that comes down to what have you been doing before with exercise, your lifestyle habits, and your nutrition habits, right? That's not my fault. That's something you got to own and understand, that changes don't always happen overnight based on many factors: gender, genetics, age, and so forth. So in terms of the dietary fat question, yes, there's a focus on monounsaturated fats, but in nature, dietary fats are in combination. You could have larger amounts of some. So for example, polyunsaturated fats, monounsaturated fats, and saturated fats are together in certain sources. Now, things like olive oil, avocado, and so forth are going to have a higher amount of monounsaturated fats, but they're going to have some other amounts of saturated and polyunsaturated too. So when you're consuming the right sources of dietary fats as nature intended, I don't think you need to wrap your head around so much of like, what's the ratio of this or that. Now, grass-fed beef is going to have a higher saturated count, and that's a big deal. Saturated fat has been unfairly villainized. When you're looking at studies that looked at saturated fat from fast food burgers and commercially raised cows and combined with sugar and fried things and corn oil, that's really not, to me, a good way to measure what does saturated fat alone do. If you're getting organically raised saturated fats from a grass-fed cow, that's a whole different ballgame than a commercially raised animal. Why? Commercially raised animals are given hormones, they're given antibiotics, and that crap goes into the food. They're also given cement chips and other things like that to make them weigh more at auction. You don't want that. So organically raised protein and dietary fat sources are completely different in terms of how the saturated fats make the body respond. What fats do you need to avoid for the rest of your life? Great question. Trans fats, soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, those are the primary ones. Corn oil is used to fry most things: French fries, fried chicken, chicken wings. I mean, you see these monstrously obese people at fairs eating fried Oreos. I mean, give me a break. What do you think that's going to do to you? So you want to avoid those things. Now, unfortunately, canola oil is in so many what are marketed as healthy foods, and so is soybean oil. And I don't know why. I don't know what they do for taste. You want to avoid those because they screw up fat cell function. You also want to avoid things like margarine and hydrogenated fats. You don't want to use like those non-stick sprays. If you need to cook, use grass-fed butter, right? There's a brand, it's called Kerrygold from Ireland. That's the one I use. I'm sure there's others. It's really good stuff. So again, look at the labels on a lot of things you're eating. You're going to find canola oil, soybean oil, and corn oil, and you want to avoid those like the plague. They're terrible for you. Aren't fats very calorie dense? Yes, they are. Fats have 9 calories per gram. But let's give you an introduction to calories as how I like to look at it. And this is not something that I invented. This is a scenario that Dr. Serrano uses to lecture very often. If you ask a room full of people, some of them being experts, some of them people just being lay people, and you say, what's the difference between 100 calories of Lucky Charms breakfast cereal and 100 calories of broccoli? Now, they're both carbohydrates, right? So do they create the same effect? I think common sense would tell you no, they do not. Now, some very traditional people in the nutrition field might say, yes, they're exactly the same. They're dead wrong. So Lucky Charms is full of refined crap and sugar, things that body did not intend to digest. It screws up digestion, causes a lot of problems, sends insulin crazy, which is the body's most potent fat-storing hormone. Now, when you look at broccoli, it's fairly inert. It's got dietary fiber in it, doesn't have any sugar, nature intended it. So I think people need to shift from the focus on calories to quality food sources. And what I find with people is they're going to self-modulate the amount of food that they're eating with the 21-day fat cell cleanse, because dietary fats and high fiber intake from green vegetables and good fat sources, as well as protein sources from organic sources, are very filling in nature. And again, we have examples laid out in the file that I can send you which show you portion sizes. But the feedback that I get from people is they feel pretty darn good. They're eating more protein and dietary fat than they had before. They feel very satisfied with their meals. So I don't necessarily like to focus on calorie content that much. And also, nobody's really accurate when they track it. They think they are by putting it on a food scale and so forth, or looking at packaging, but studies tell us that it's very hard to track that accurately. Focus on the quality, the combinations of foods, and that's going to put you in the best situation. Because again, you've got to understand how certain foods affect you differently. And that also gets you into food allergies, irritations, and intolerances. There are some healthy food sources out there, eggs being one of them, that people are inherently allergic to them, or they've consumed them so often for such an extended period of time that it causes stomach upset, difficulty breathing, irritable mood, joint pain, difficulty losing body fat, low energy, and all other types of problems, skin rashes, right? That should tell you to stop eating whatever that is, and why you should take note of what you're eating during the day, because if you're feeling bad, you can associate it with a certain food source and eliminate it for a while. And that's something where the EZ14 digestive enzyme catalyst comes in very handy. It provides you digestive enzymes that the body does make and other digestive enzymes the body does not make. And this is something that Dr. Serrano worked on for many years in terms of different combinations. Because if you're constantly suffering from food allergies, you've depleted your natural enzyme availability. And that makes it very hard to have a high quality of life and to improve your body composition. Which is why, especially with people over 35 or 40, I'm going to say a large percentage of them, especially if they're trying to lose body fat, are having difficulties with digestion one way or the other. And 3EZ14 with each meal is going to help people feel much better and help them lose body fat faster. Because think of it this way, every time you consume something that's a food allergen, whether it's something you are inherently allergic to or something that you've developed an allergy to over time, and common ones are eggs, dairy, tomatoes, corn, anything that somebody's eaten too often, chicken. So what happens is they cause a poor metabolic response, then the body has to use so many resources to clean up the mess, so to speak. And that's fewer resources available to burn fat and to repair muscle. If you've been eating the wrong dietary fats for a while, how does that affect you? One of the things we know is that fat cells are a storage dump for toxins. They're also a deposition for good materials too. So if you've been consuming bad dietary fats for a while, it depletes the fat cells. And it depletes them of the good stuff that they need. You know, your omega-3, your omega-6, your omega-9, which you may have read about. So understand that's a negative impact. It also can negatively impact your insulin sensitivity and many other factors too. So understand that it's not just what you eat on a day and how it affects you that day. It affects you for many days, weeks, if not longer. And you want to have the good ratios of dietary fats in your cells by making good food choices and using the alpha omega M3 to push the bad stuff out, leave the good stuff in. Those cells collectively shrink in size, and that's one of the very important ways that we lose body fat. A perfect meal for a 200-pound man would be, probably let's say 12 ounces of grass-fed beef, a lot of green vegetables with grass-fed butter, and a side of guacamole, maybe like, 2 or 3 tablespoons of guacamole, or maybe a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. A salad's always a good thing, but I don't count that as green vegetables because it's just lettuce, depending on what you have in there. We tend to use the higher dietary fat intake at lunch, and at dinner, leaner sources like cage-free chicken, wild-caught fish, wild-caught seafood are great. Again, using more dietary fat from extra virgin olive oil, guacamole, grass-fed butter. Those are good sources for you. And for a woman, I would say maybe reduce the portions by about a third. So if it's a 150-pound woman, probably between 30 and 40 grams of protein at a meal and an additional 20 to 25 grams of dietary fat. And I don't count the carbohydrate that's in green vegetables. They're so inert, so don't worry about that. But each person can be a little different in terms of how much food they need. How many calories are they burning mentally? Yeah, the brain and how active you are mentally with work and other things impacts your caloric burn. What are you doing with exercise? So some people need to eat a little bit more and they can still lose body fat very effectively because they're making the right food choices. So it's something you have to maybe adjust a little bit. I would say about 80% of people, they follow what's written on the plan and they're good to go. The other 20% may need some adjustments, and I can help you with that. Again, just email me 7 days a week. I'm really good at this stuff. Okay, I'm looking through some other questions, and I think I've answered a lot of them already. I jumped the gun on that. Will calorie restriction alone be enough to shrink fat cells? Nope. If they're lodged full of crap, like preservatives, they're going to stay swollen. So let me give you an example. Preservatives are put into bread, cookies, baked goods. Why? To preserve the shelf life and also to keep them tasting nice and good. But those preservatives were not what nature intended. So what happens when you eat those things and they get into your fat cells? They're going to preserve themselves and bind to other crap in the fat cells and become very stubborn and hard to get rid of. So you can be in a caloric deficit all you want. Is that going to solve your problems in terms of body fat loss and fat cells? No, it will not. Okay, what is the problem with if it fits your macros approach? Now, my understanding of that approach is you have a certain calorie amount and certain macros in terms of carbohydrate, protein, and dietary fat to hit, and with that you can eat whatever you want. That's idiotic. I've been doing this for over 21 years, I've been very successful, and I've exchanged emails with literally well over 100,000 people over that time, more than that, and collected feedback from all kinds of people. And a lot of people volunteer information about what things work and what don't. So that fit your macros thing does not work. Back to the example where, what's going to happen with the body when you consume 100 calories of Lucky Charms and 100 calories of broccoli. They're both carbohydrate. Won't they produce the same result? No, they won't. Refined foods, in particular, that a lot of people are going to put in their diet so they can justify it with this, if it fits your macros nonsense, is going to cause problems. There could be some initial weight loss of muscle. Maybe there's some initial loss of fat loss just by reducing calories for somebody that's really obese. But in terms of if the goal is to earn a low level of body fat, people are going to look good on the beach, have a high quality of life, that idea that you can eat whatever food sources you want as long as you fit a certain caloric intake and a certain macronutrient intake is complete and utter nonsense. Let's look at the other example of food allergies. So if I'm somebody that's been eating chicken and eggs every day for 20 years and I continue to do that on that plan, am I going to be successful? Nope. You're going to develop all kinds of problems, difficulties again with digestion, bloating, low energy, rashes and joint pain, right? So why would you do that? And again, it's creating this tremendous metabolic and hormonal mess that the body has to dedicate all kinds of resources to clean up. But technically, that would make sense if it fits your macros nonsense. So no, that does not work. And as I've explained, the other reasons why calories are one factor of many, right? The food choices, combinations, and timing are very important as well. And something else to consider too is that the 100% MR in the muscle synthesis powder, while they don't have caloric burden, they account for significant calorie burning theoretically each day, again, based on the powerful signals that they're sending to the brain that food has come in. And those can be used first thing in the morning, they can be used between meals, during the fasted protocol, and also, of course, pre and post training to help the body utilize more stored fat as fuel, to protect hard-earned muscle, to prevent massive muscle soreness, to improve performance, to prevent the post-workout fatigue hangover that a lot of people experience, and also, again, to increase the utilization of stored fat as fuel. I think I mentioned that one. But also lays the perfect raw material foundations that muscles need to repair quickly, because the 100% MR in the muscle synthesis powder, being amino acids, they bypass the digestive hangups, right? When you're training, you're pumping a lot of blood in your muscles. That's good. That acts as a nutrient superhighway to carry nutrients in and garbage out. But if you go ahead and drink a protein shake or eat a meal immediately following training, that's going to divert blood away from the muscles and into the stomach to assist with digestion. Then you lose a large part of your highway. It makes no sense. The 100% MR in the muscle synthesis powder, on the other hand, again, bypass digestion, get right to the bloodstream to help working muscles with recovery and fueling immediately. What do you do after you've had success with the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program? I think this question is, what do I do for maintenance? I would say that earning a low level of body fat is a lot tougher than it is to maintain it. So in general, what I've seen, if people can find a balance that they're able to maintain a low level of body fat with more freedom in the diet, more targeted carb intake, but can you use fasting for a long period of time? Fasts ranging from 12 to 16 hours, in some cases longer, over the long term and be successful? Yeah, you can. It's a really effective tool for people to keep their body fat levels low long term. I think everybody's a little different in terms of, what do you need to do in terms of exercise and nutrition and supplementation and lifestyle to maintain a certain effect. Again, it takes less effort than it does to change the body comp, but everybody's a little different. What I find with a lot of people is when they adapt or adopt good habits, they stick with those over the long term in many ways, make other adjustments, include more carbohydrate, for some people, include larger portions, and do real well. But it does take some effort to maintain your success over the long term. And again, I think that's something that I'm more likely to individually calibrate for people as needed. So email me with any of your questions. I'm happy to answer them. Scott@infinityfitness.com. If you'd like free copies of the program, I'll happily send them to you. And again, the 21-day fat cell cleanse nutrition program was designed by Dr. Serrano and myself to help you outsmart up to 10 pounds of body fat in just 3 weeks. But using it for longer periods of time, alternating with a day 22 carb load, has been highly effective for people that need to lose a lot more body fat. It's been very successful for thousands of people worldwide since we released it. Give it a try. It works very well.